Hi, and welcome to the Kelly Kitley Podcast, America's Social Worker Unfiltered, where every week I have hopeful, honest, and deeply human conversations with changemakers. And today I am so excited to introduce you to Caroline Beidler, who is a three-time author, a mother, a woman in long-term recovery, a fellow social worker, an advocate, a managing editor for recovery.com, and just an overall badass. And I invited her to talk to us on the podcast because she just published her newest book, When You Love Someone in Recovery, a hopeful guide to understanding addiction. And I got an advanced copy from your publisher and read it in one sitting on a flight. And I think it is the Bible of what every family who loves someone in recovery needs to read. So thank you so much for writing this book.
Oh my goodness, what an intro. Thank you for that. And I'm so excited to connect with you. I feel like there's a kindredness about our connection here. So I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Absolutely. So let's just start with why. Why did you write this book? I know you're a mom and have curious kids
Mm.
who wanted to know what recovery is all about. But why now?
Yeah, so the book really, I think, started with actually one of my kids questioning me about what recovery is. What is it all about? And I remember I was headed out to a recovery meeting on a Wednesday night. And, my kiddos were young. And so we'd talk about addiction recovery or mommy's going to meetings. But it was the first time one of my children's turned to me and said, Mommy, what's recovery? And it was like one of those questions that just hit my heart. And you mentioned I'm a social worker. I love research too. And so it led me down this path of talking to other people in recovery, other affected family members. I started thinking about and recalling my own family's experience when I was going through, addiction treatment, when I was really struggling, and then even in recovery.
Mhm.
And my marriage, I mean, my husband has only known me as a woman in recovery. And so when we first started dating, he had all sorts of questions. And he's told me now, he's like, I wish I had this book, when we were dating, because he thought that recovery meant, just meetings in dark church basements.
Mhm.
And I think all of this, my personal experience, the research, talking to a lot of affected family members, led me to want to explain what recovery is all about and kind of synthesize evidence-based information and how can we actually show up and love people whether they're struggling with addiction or in recovery.
Mhm.
How can we do that?
Mhm.
And yeah, so I hope that the book addresses, some misconceptions about what we've gotten wrong in terms of how we show up to support folks, and then also just as like a guidebook or a
Mhm.
roadmap for people who love someone in recovery.
And you so beautifully lay out the language that has changed as well. There are some old school, as I call them, as we're
Mhm.
talking about our generation of terms, and this
Mhm.
and also the idea of dark church basements, which is a
Mhm.
place that felt like home to me
Mhm.
during my early years of being a sober woman. And I am so grateful for that. But oftentimes people do associate that with what recovery is. And
Mhm.
you are living proof of it being something totally different from what I see on social media, because you use that platform to educate people so well. And so I guess I want to go to more of a personal level of like, what
Mhm.
did your husband understand about being with a woman or dating a woman in recovery, and how did you navigate that?
Yeah, so there's this funny story, and I'm laughing because I can see the picture in my mind. And he told me, and this all kind of came out later on, after we'd been together for a while. But he said, when we first started dating, he did what a lot of folks do nowadays when you start dating someone, which is stalk them on social media, look through all the pictures, and so he did that. And there was a picture from me from early recovery. My hair was very different. Dark hair, bangs. But I was wearing the shirt that said sober Saturday nights. And my husband remembered, he said, I saw that picture and I was like, huh? Like, what? Sober Saturday night? Like, and my husband is not in recovery. And he told me, and he kind of confessed, he's like, I wasn't sure what that meant.
Mhm.
And it took me a while, a couple dates. And it's funny how we feel like we have to like come clean about, our recovery. Like, okay, I got to tell you something.
Right.
Um, but I told him I was in recovery and he didn't know what that meant. He said then later he moved from kind of following me on social media to Googling my name. And I was like, uh-oh, that means it's serious when you Google someone. But a couple of the things that I had been involved in when I lived in Wisconsin, recovery organizations and recovery housing, some things popped up. And he said, I started to read about you and about how you were involved in the community and what you were doing to give back as a person in recovery. And he said, that is when I fell in love with you. And it opened his eyes to the fact that being in recovery is more than sobriety. And so that was one of the things I really wanted to highlight in this book and do, because I think, my husband's not the only one, certainly, who's getting into a relationship with someone, married to someone. I mean, a lot of folks are in partnerships, their loved one gets into recovery during that relationship.
Mhm.
Children, we have so many loved ones, and we know today that addiction impacts almost everyone, if not everyone. And it's imperative that we understand how to show up and love folks. So, like I said, my husband wishes he had the book. I'm like, that's a great marketing. I will say that, honey, because, but he does. He wishes he had the information that is shared when we first connected, and it would have helped him out a lot.
And that's usually what drives us to write
Mm-hmm.
something, right? Something we
Mm-hmm.
wish other people had or that
Mm-hmm.
we had ourselves when we were going through something. So thank you for that. And I have heard wonderful things about you and your husband sharing your story publicly and during the book promotion, and recovery.com speaks so very highly of you and the work you do for them as well. So it is a guidebook for people. And I think everything that you produce, whether it's on Substack or can you talk a little bit about Circle of Chairs? Because that is something that I feel like everything that you create, I'm like, ooh, I love the language. Like it
Mm-hmm.
just speaks to me as a woman in long-term recovery as well. And I'm constantly looking to change and evolve. And so for people listening, I think that's another stereotype that you break is,
Mm-hmm.
that we don't just stop drinking we or drugging,
Mm-hmm.
that sobriety and recovery can be very different and they can
Mm-hmm.
intersect as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is. Sobriety can be a starting point, but it's not like where we're working towards. And I think something shifts for us all when we kind of come to that understanding. And it did take me years into my own recovery journey, sobriety journey, to understand that fully. And I'm still learning. More shall be revealed, as they say. But in terms of, your question with Circle of Chairs. So, for those of us in recovery, and even if, you've been involved in a support group of any kind or a small group, like that image. I'm a very visual person. And so just
Hmm.
that image of a circle of chairs, it is a very intimate thing.
Hmm.
And if you think about sitting, with an open circle, so your knees are facing other knees and we're making eye contact with people around the room, it's a very intimate thing and it can be a very uncomfortable thing. I remember the first time I sat in a circle of chairs, and I just remember sitting there thinking, I wish there were a table in front of me. I wish there were a table in front of me. Like I literally needed a physical barrier between my person and your person, all the people, because I just had such a hard time sitting in a room. And then when it came to sharing honestly about struggles and joys, it, oh, and I'm getting emotional thinking about it, but those first like recovery spaces I was in, it was like this coming home to like, wow, is this really what belonging feels like? Is this really what like being a human is about, is connecting with others? And I had lived so much of my life in isolation and feeling like I had to do it all myself,
Hmm.
that I couldn't rely on anyone else for help. And Circles of Chairs breaks down that. lie, I think. And
Mm.
so my Substack, it took me a while to come up with the name, but then it did. And I was like, yeah, because what I hope for that space, and I have to say, my favorite place to show up is through words. I love writing. I just have always been in love with words and books. And so it's my favorite place to show up on the internet. Um, but I hope it invites people. It's a welcoming place. I hope that it challenges people. I know it challenges me when I'm working on a letter. A lot of times, I personally will be challenged, but I love hearing from people who respond and say, this hit me this week or how it impacted them. Because I think sometimes, too, as advocates and social workers at heart and, giving back in recovery community, we give back sometimes, but we don't always see the fruit of how we're, our hard work, basically. And so when you're writing, kind of there's that we're in an open circle virtually, right? But I love to connect with people in real life, too. So
Mm.
long-winded answer there for you, Kelly, but
No,
uh,
I love it. And I think that as you were explaining that image, of sitting in a circle and you started to get emotional. My brother is in recovery as well, and we went
mm,
to a drum circle over the weekend.
mm,
And that was something I hadn't done before.
wow,
And
yeah,
we sat down and he's like, "This is like an AA meeting." And I was like, "It is." And it's just, I mean, it's vulnerable, and yet,
mm,
you know, when you can look at everybody in the circle and see their eyes and be connected without distraction, I think
mhm,
a lot of emotional things can happen in that space if you allow it
mhm,
to. And
mhm,
in April I focused so much on Alcohol Awareness Month, but May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and you
mhm,
have been very open about navigating trauma and trauma responses. And so many of us who are in recovery from alcohol and drugs have a comorbidity with mental health.
mhm,
And so, whatever you feel comfortable sharing,
mhm,
how you take care of your mental health today. And, I think the family lineage piece of it too,
mhm,
for me, has been so eye-opening as I get older too, and learning more about, like, oh, there wasn't language of what great grandma was going through, but actually it was
mhm,
like postpartum depression and she medicated with alcohol.
mhm,
So I'm curious to know from your personal experience,
mhm.
what that's been like for you.
Yeah, well, like I mentioned earlier, when I started the recovery journey and my sobriety, I thought that just stopping the substance, like that was the end goal, right? And that things would just get better after that. It did get better and it does get better. And I think what I learned early on, I think it was in year like 3 or 4 or 5, how much what I had experienced as a child and young adult was kind of informing how I was showing up, even as a person in recovery, a person sober.
Mhm,
And I needed to do more work on my mental health. And, so for me at that time, it was going back and seeing a therapist and not only talking about my addiction, but talking about trauma.
mhm,
Um, I love the evidence based model you might be familiar with, seeking safety.
mhm,
So, what was so empowering for me was to not just go back to revisit what I had experienced, although that type of therapy can be super helpful. And there's
mhm,
a, tremendous evidence base behind that being effective. What I needed too was learning coping strategies and really how to address some of the symptoms of my trauma so that I could live and show up in my daily life in a healthy way and connect with others.
mhm,
A lot of my trauma showed up in relationships too. And so I struggled for a lot of years with
mhm,
really toxic, unhealthy relationships and continued to do harm to
mhm,
myself, to my body through some of those relationships, even in sobriety. So
mhm,
I think one of the things I'm one of the reasons I'm so passionate about, you know, telling the truth about mental health and recovery is like they're so connected. And when so many of us have had really hard experiences, traumas, adverse childhood experiences as young people, and
mhm,
even into, whatever age we are, um, we need to talk about and learn how to tend to our mental well-being. And so for me today,
Mhm.
I love how recovery evolved. I feel like it's a new season. Like I'm in the blonde season. I know I love your blondes. It's because I have to be here, and I guess if you know what I'm saying. But I have to be blonde now. It's like a changing season of recovery where now I need to learn how to slow down a bit more and
Mhm.
like be okay taking steps back and discerning how to use my time, how I'm going to spend my time. Physical movement. I used to be big into like running and exercise, and being in my 40s now, I'm like, even now, I'm like, my knee, I got a bum knee.
Girl,
So
say
so I'm like, so me now, like I feel good when I can get that weighted vest on, or not, just walking around the block,
yes.
moving my body is a way that
Mhm.
I can tend to my mental health.
Mm.
And there's just so many nutrition and talking to people, social support. So there in different seasons, I've learned different things that I need for my mental health and well-being. And certainly if I have things that come up, in 2020, I don't know where y'all were, but I had really bad anxiety. And so I went back to see a therapist. I got on medication. I did things for my mental health that I needed to kind of get another level of care at that time. Again,
Mhm.
even in recovery.
Mhm.
So yeah, I appreciate the question, and I love having these months where, like you highlight with your book, being able to be open and connect with experiences that we're having, and doing so as different months kind of bring to light these different areas that are so important.
Absolutely. And something you didn't mention that I am so curious about is your
Mhm.
spirituality and your religious background, because I know that
Mhm.
you do identify as Christian, and
Mhm.
that seems to be a very foundational piece for you,
Mhm.
from what I've read.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you asking. It hasn't always been, and I think I didn't grow up a Christian. I was never baptized actually as a baby. Kind of grew up without a religious or spiritual foundation at all. And so I spent a lot of years, I feel like, seeking something outside of myself, but not having a name for what I was seeking. And in my early 20s, I started to learn a name that connected really deeply with me. And so, being a Christian, I chose to be baptized in my 20s. Didn't get sober right away or find recovery, but my spiritual formation has kind of been step by step with my recovery. And in the past couple of years, that pathway has just like merged for me, kind of like two lanes of traffic. It's like, "Nope, now we're going together." And I love connecting with folks about my faith, and I
Mhm.
think it's really important, and I hope that I do this in my writing and my books, to be invitational.
Mm.
Um, Invitational, like I know in some recovery pathways, they talk about attraction and not promotion, but
Mhm.
invitational because we all might be in a different place, and I certainly have at different points in my faith and recovery journey. And so I'm happy to talk about it, but at the same time, I recognize that even the word Christian can make people like feel the cringe, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Because a lot of the ways of Jesus that we're taught about have been perverted and distorted. And frankly, like there's been a lot of negativity and like bad actors out there that give Christianity a really not great name.
Right.
And there's been so much church hurt.
Mhm.
And gosh, I was just talking with a friend the other day about his experience with being hurt, by the church, not understanding his recovery journey. So again, part of like why I want to get this information out, like with my new book, When You Love Someone in Recovery, it's not just for affected family members. It is for affected family members, but it's also for like faith communities, because I think churches, just like family members, need to understand what recovery is and how to show up and help and support from evidence-based and practical ways.
Mm.
And I think Christians have a unique opportunity to be able to serve people like me, people struggling with addiction, struggling with mental health, serve us in a really impactful way. And I hope resources like mine, like yours, can equip faith communities to do that.
And you do. I mean, I can speak to it being an invitation, where I think sometimes people are turned off by religion because it feels shaming or blaming or rule
Mhm.
following. And your invitation is just laid out so beautifully, in a way that people can choose to find whatever path works for them. And I know you use the word season a lot. And I can tell that that is a foundation for you, because something I'm so drawn to about you and the work that you do is you have this very clear, grounded vision, and that comes out in your work. And so I've been, cheering you on from the sidelines
Mhm.
for a long time, since friends of ours connected us, and then to come full circle and have this conversation is so special,
Mm.
because you inspire me to keep doing the work that we're doing. Because sometimes, as you mentioned, it can be thankless, or you don't know if you're making an impact unless, you know, somebody tells you. And so
Mm.
it is just having the faith that the work needs to be done and that it's being received well, and that it's helping other people. So you motivate me to keep doing the work that I do. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Well, and I have to just say that right back to you because I think one of the things that I love about you is your boldness and just being so vocal and visible about your experience and then also your expertise. And I think a lot of times as women, we're encouraged to, or I've felt like I should say, to kind of like play small or like not step into spaces to talk about our experience. I think as a trauma survivor, I felt that too, not
Mm,
having a voice. And so I see you out there on Good Morning America and all of these news outlets and with your book, sharing your experience. It is such a beautiful, powerful thing for other women to see. So I am moved by you every time I see one of your posts too, Kelly. And it's
thank you.
encouragement to me. And I truly am a huge fan and cheering you on.
Mm,
We need as many women in this space as we can get. And
mhm,
I think we need to just keep championing one another and
mhm.
working together.
And it helps us heal. And there is a selfish component to it, in the sense
Yes.
that, it allows me to keep showing up and walking the walk, walking the talk.
Yeah, no.
That it is. It's like, I need to practice this and I want to practice this. And I do feel like it is a calling. And I know that you do as well. And I guess, kind of transitioning into another holiday, because I'm going to drop this right away with Mother's Day coming up. And I
Oh
saw
yeah.
the pictures you posted of you pregnant with twins, and your babies, a boy and a girl. Are they 8?
They're gonna be 8.
They're
Yeah.
gonna be
Mhm.
8. Okay. So you, unlike me, who escalated my drinking during having children,
Mhm.
you started as a sober mom. And
Mhm.
so, what's that like? Not just being a sober mom, but just being a mom in general, and to
Oh,
twins, and, as you're educating your family about recovery and mental health.
yeah. Well, it's hard. It's hard. I have a letter on Substack coming out on Thursday, and I quote Tina Fey, and it's like I don't know if I forget verbatim, but something like recover or being a mom is great, and I'm like really tired all the time. But no, it's amazing, Kelly. I honestly didn't think it would be part of my story. And I got married much later in life. I was like 30, I don't know, 35. And then, the twins came a year later. And total surprise and just incredible surprise. And you know, it's amazing. It's incredible. But one of the things that I learned through my own journey as a mom in recovery is how hard it is for us, because we have these dual roles of we're caregivers and we have all of these, this mental load and these expectations and pressures. And there's not a lot of space or time to tend to ourselves. It's almost seen as like selfish to do that.
Mhm.
And so it's been a real learning experience for me to kind of figure out, okay, how do I build a recovery that works for me? Not the stuff people see on social media, but my personal
Mhm.
recovery. How do I build that in a way that also honors me to be able to show up as the best mom I can be and to give as much time as I can? to my family and to my kids. So, but it's been incredible. It's the best thing. I mean, I love it so much. I love my kids and my family. Sometimes I just look at them and I'm like, yeah, and I'm getting teary now. I will never forget when I when I found out I was pregnant with, I thought it was just one, but we went in for our first ultrasound and the woman, the tech was like, "Have you had one of these yet?" And I was like, "No." My husband was there, and then she said, "Well, you've got two." And I was just like, "Are you serious?" I start like joy crying and screaming and shrieking. And my husband was like cool as a cucumber, like, "All right, we got this." It was very challenging. Let me just say that. Almost killed me, like for real, being pregnant with twins. But it's been amazing. And I think, part of why I do what I do is because I want them to be as equipped as possible to face the world that they're facing and that they're going to face as they age and get older.
Mhm.
I'm actually doing some research now on how do we talk to our kids
Yes.
about addiction and recovery,
Mhm.
because I think that it's kind of this next step of, okay, there's been a lot of misinformation and how families can show up, and how do we talk about this with our kids? I think there's been a ton of really horrible advice given,
Yes.
all the
Yes.
way back to like the whole just say no dare era,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so I'm really motivated, I think, now to start thinking about more of that, especially as my kids are getting to be that age. And we have really open conversations. It was so cute too. My son the other day was like, Mom, I think I think Violet, my daughter, I think Violet is addicted to those cookies. And I'm like, oh, so like they're very aware of
Yes. Uh-huh.
some of that stuff. But anyways, thank you for asking that. Yeah, motherhood's amazing. Well, and you know as well, but having that experience of, you also have experienced going through addiction, active
Mhm.
addiction, and kind
Mhm.
of that, and moving out the other side with through being a mom. I can't imagine how hard that must have been.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
And I couldn't imagine drinking and raising 4 children. So,
yeah,
it worked out well.
yeah, yeah.
uh,
Very good point.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, and I'm in the season of, teenagers, which is, rooted in college drinking culture and
Mhm.
the normalization of binge drinking, and I mean, quite candidly, it terrifies me just,
Yeah.
the repeated patterns we've seen over generations in our family, and it's something I practice daily. Like, I am powerless over my children. And my daughter's always like, I hate when you say that. Like, you do have some, like, it makes it seem like you don't have any responsibility. I'm like, no, I do. But, I mean, our
Yeah.
oldest are 20 and 18. They're going to make the decisions that they make. But
Yeah.
hopefully, they know that they can have open communication, not
Mm.
only because I'm a social worker, but because they have seen me work a program of
Mm.
a life in sobriety.
Yeah.
So it's we're constantly changing and evolving and learning new. So if you
Mm.
could write that as your next book, that would be awesome.
Oh no, no pressure, right? Well, no, it's just I'm exploring, because I think that is an important topic. But like you said, the best thing we can do is model
Hmm.
recovery looks like for our kids.
Yeah.
I think there's been this, like the whole just say no thing missed an important piece, which was when you just tell people not to do something, you're
Hmm.
not modeling for them what they should be doing. Like, what do we say yes to? Like,
Hmm.
yeah, let's say no to this, but what are we saying yes to?
Hmm.
And I want my kids to say yes to gratitude and to physical health and wellness and to mental health and to boundaries,
Mm.
taking care of themselves. And so I think when we can kind of shift and reframe that, we can share recovery with our kids and not be as afraid of what our addiction will do.
That's such great reframing. I love that. Can you say that again?
No, I
I,
can't. And I think that's the social worker in
I'll
me.
rewind again. I'm like, I had you on my podcast just for me. If anybody, you know that, right? Like, I'm like, please tell me more.
Oh, well, it is a social worker in me, but no, I appreciate this conversation so much.
Mhm.
And yeah, like I said, just look up to you and the work that you do. And yeah, I love your book. I think it is so candid and we talked about invitational, but inviting people to think differently about their
Mm.
relationship with alcohol and what's next for them, what they want to say yes to.
Thank you. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Yeah.
And in closing, what are you going to do for Mother's Day?
Good question. Can I guiltily say I'd like to just lay in my hammock with a book without anyone present? That maybe
Absolutely, and
okay.
no guilt required.
I'd like
Doesn't
an
every mom
hour.
want that?
Yeah, I would like an hour of that, please. And
Yes.
then, yeah, I just like good food with my kids, maybe a walk in the woods. Yeah, simple.
Self-care stuff, right?
Yes, yes. How about you? How about you?
Our son is coming home from college tomorrow. I'm so excited. He's only
Mm.
going to be home for 10 days, and then he's spending his summer at the Jersey Shore with his grandparents and working at
Oh,
a
okay.
restaurant. But he is working at a restaurant here while he's home, and his younger brother is shadowing him and training him because he just got a job there. So rather
Okay.
than trying to orchestrate, I'm the oldest of five, and so there's this like leadership kind of um lot in life, I guess. I just was born into. It's like, what are we doing for Mother's Day? I'm like, I made reservations for 20. Whoever wants to show up,
There you
show
go.
up. So I
Oh,
think everybody's showing up. I'm looking forward to it. Nobody has to
oh,
cook or clean or
that's perfect. Yeah. Oh, well, enjoy that. That's
thank you.
beautiful.
Thank you so much. And thank you for saying yes. And I will put the link to purchase your new book, When You Love Someone in Recovery, in the show notes and post it on social media and your Substack as well.
Awesome.
For everybody listening, just a gentle reminder to be the change you wish to see in the world. Allow it to start within, in your family, in your community, and let that ripple effect take over the world. Thanks for listening.